Hey everybody, today we're going to be working on lesson 5. This is solving problems by finding equivalent ratios. We're still on the standard RP.1.1, and that's to understand the concept of a ratio and to use ratio language to describe a ratio relationship between two quantities. Alright, so our learning target today, students, you guys will use tape diagrams to find an equivalent ratio when given the part-to-part ratio and the total of the two quantities. You also use tape diagrams to find an equivalent ratio when given the part-to-part ratio and the difference between those two quantities. So we're going to be working with part-to-part ratios and the part-to-whole. All right, so let's go ahead and look at example 1. All right, it says a county superintendent of highways is interested in the number of different types of vehicles that regularly travel within his county. In the month of August, a total of 192 registrations were purchased for passenger cars and pickup trucks at the local Department of Motor Vehicles. That's the DMV. All right, the DMV reported that in the month of August, for every 5 passenger cars registered, there were 7 pickup trucks registered. How many of each type of vehicle were registered in the county in the month of August? All right, so in that, remember, you should always underline your key details. So in this one, we have the total, that's 192. And we also have the information that for every, what tells us ratio, for every 5 passenger cars registered, there were 7 pickup trucks. So that's the ratio we'll be dealing with, 5 and 7, 5 cars to 7 trucks. All right, let's look at part A. It says, using the information in this problem, write 4 different ratios and describe the meaning of each. This is where we're going to be talking about the part-to-part and the part-to-whole. All right, so our first ratio, let's do a ratio for the amount of cars to trucks. It says for every 5 passenger cars registered, there were 7 pickup trucks registered. So my ratio for cars to trucks, I would write is 5 to 7. That tells me for every 5 cars registered, there were 7 pickup trucks registered. All right, what about I wanted to know how many trucks were registered compared to cars? Would it be the same? No, because remember, the order matters. So 5 to 7 is telling me I'm comparing cars to trucks. If I wanted to compare trucks to cars, I would say for every 7 trucks that were registered, there were 5 cars registered. So these two tells me 2 different information. The first one's comparing cars to truck. My second ratio is comparing trucks to cars. All right, so now think of, let's try it, that those are both part-to-part ratios. Both are part of them is cars, part are trucks, and the other one's just flipped. Now to do part-to-whole. All right, first I'll start with my part. So I'm going to draw a line here, start with the part. So I know I have 5 cars, so there's part of the problem. How many vehicles was there in all? So you would count 5 plus 7 would give you 12. And that is my part-to-whole ratio. That tells me the ratio of cars to total vehicles is 5 to 12. And the same with trucks. If I wanted the ratio of trucks to total vehicles, it would be 7 to 12. And again, that's a part-to-whole ratio. So we have our part-to-part ratios on this side, and then we have our part-to-whole on this side. All right, and that's our 4 ratios for part A. Let's go ahead and move on to part B. It says, make a tape diagram that represents the quantities in the part-to-part ratios that you wrote. So remember that we had the part-to-part was cars to trucks. So we'll do the cars, or trucks to cars, but we'll work on the cars to trucks. We'll do the 5 to 7, our first part-to-part ratio. All right, so I'm going to put a C for cars and a T for trucks. Take just a minute. I'll give you just a minute to draw out a tape diagram for each one of these to see if you guys remember from yesterday's lesson how to create a tape diagram. All right, so cars should have had 5 boxes. So there's 5 for cars, and then trucks should have had 7 boxes. And these need to look more even, so let's take a little bit off the end here. It's supposed to be all proportionate, but I know it's kind of hard on this to make them completely proportional. All right, so now we need 7 boxes. Again, take a little bit off here. All right, so now I have 5 to 7, my tape diagram. For part C, it says how many equal-sized parts does a tape diagram consist of? Remember, each one of these boxes should be equal. It doesn't look quite like it on here. It's hard to do it on this surface, but you would count each box. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the cars, and then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for trucks. 5 plus 7 would be 12 boxes in all. So C would be 12. All right, D says what total quantity does the tape diagram represent? So look back at the word problem, and that was some of the key details that should have been underlined. Well, it says, look at the second sentence. It says in the month of August, a total of how many vehicles were, registrations were purchased for passenger cars and passenger trucks? That is the answer for part D. And you should have had that underlined as 192. So that means all of the cars and all of the trucks has to equal 192. All right, so D would be 192 vehicles. All right, let's look at part E. It says, what value does each individual part of the tape diagram represent? Okay, we know that there are 12 boxes in all, and we know that all 12 boxes must equal 192. So now we need to figure out how much does each box represent. We'll give you guys a second to talk to your neighbor or in your group and see if you could figure out how are you going to determine what each box represents. So we know there's 12 boxes in those tape diagrams all together, and they all must equal 192. How much does each one equal? So you should divide 192 by 12. You do 192, and let's go ahead and do that. 192 divided by 12, and that's going to tell us what each individual box represents. 12 goes into 192 one time. 1 times 12 is 12. Subtract that, we have 7. Let's bring down our 2. 12 goes into 72 6 times. 6 times 12 is 72. And we're left with 0 remaining. So that means each one of these boxes equals 16. All right. So each equal size part equals 16. So F says how many each type of vehicle were registered in August. Well, now we know that each part in the tape diagram equals 16. So now all you need to do is for cars, 16 times 5, because there's 5 boxes. And for trucks, it should be 16 times 7, since there's 7 boxes for trucks. So do 16 times 5 to figure out the cars, and 16 times 7 to figure out how many trucks. And then to check your answer, if you add those two totals together, remember there was 192 total vehicles at registrations, so it should equal 192. So I'm gonna give you guys about a minute to multiply that. All right, so for cars, you should have got 80. 16 times 5 is 80, and then 16 times 7 would have given you 112 pickup trucks. So now we can add them together, and remember 112 and 80, the total amount should equal 192. All right, 2 plus 0 is 2, 1 plus 8 is 9, bring down your 1, and we got 192. All right, let's move on to example 2. Let me erase this. All right, it says the superintendent of highways is further interested in the number of commercial vehicles that frequently use the county's highways. He obtains information from the Department of Motor Vehicles for the month of September and finds that for every 14 non-commercial vehicles, there were 5 commercial vehicles. If there was 108 more non-commercial vehicles than commercial vehicles, how many of each type of vehicle frequently use the county's highways during the month of September? All right, so for this one, you should underline your key details. So part of it was for every, so you know that part is the ratio, for every 14 non-commercial vehicles, there were 5 commercial vehicles. So you start with the N, non-commercial, that's 14. We're going to make a tape diagram. There were 5 commercial, and I'm going to put a C for commercial. All right, and then your other key details was there was 108 more non-commercial vehicles than commercials. All right, so go ahead, create your tape diagram. We're gonna hold on to this information. I'm gonna tell you how you're going to answer this once we do the tape diagram. So I had the N for non-commercial, and we had to do 14, so I'm gonna go ahead and make my tape diagram underneath it. I'm just gonna, I don't know how much that's gonna take. That's gonna be a big tape diagram. All right. All right, so I got 14 for non-commercial, and I gotta do 5 for commercial. That's a little off. All right, so we have 5 boxes for commercial, 14 boxes for non-commercial. So it says that if there was 108 more non-commercial vehicles than commercial vehicles, how many of each type of vehicle frequently use the county's highways? So all I know is, so from here to here, that is how many more non-commercial vehicles there was of commercials. Because I know there was, because you know, they had the 5 boxes that equal up to each other. So after that, this would equal 108, because that's all the extra non-commercial vehicles there are than commercial. So now let's count how many boxes that is from here, all the extra ones, to here. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and divide if that equals 108, I'm going to divide it by 9 to see how much each one of those boxes equals. And we delete this so it doesn't get some of the mess out of the way. I was just showing y'all how it matched up to these others. All right, so now let's divide 9 into 108. 9 goes into 10 one time. 9 times 10 is 1. 10 minus 9 is, sorry, 1 times 9 is 9. 10 minus 9 is 1. I'll bring down that 8. 9 goes into 18 twice. 2 times 9 is 18. So that means each one of these boxes are equal to 12. And remember, all these boxes are equal to the same number. So if all of those are equal to 12, that means every single one, including the ones with the commercial, the tape diagram below, they're all equal to 12. So now with this information, I can go ahead and solve the problem to see how many of each type of vehicle there were. Because now all I need to do is multiply the number, the ratio, by 12, since each box is equal to 12. All right, so go ahead and multiply. You'd want to multiply 14 times 12. And you're not good at multiplying, you can always add up 12 14 times. But let's see how many non-commercial vehicles there were. So 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times 1 is 2. Remember, we're going to start with that placeholder. 1 times 4 is 4, and 1 times 1 is 1. All right, and then we add them up. So I know that non-commercial vehicles is equal to 168. All right, so then I need to multiply the commercial vehicles by 12. So that'd be 12 times 5. All right, 5 times 2 is 10. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 1 is 6. So commercial is equal to 60. And remember yesterday's lesson we talked about how to see if the ratios are equivalent. You can do that here. We already know both of these sides have been multiplied by 12, so you know this is an equivalent ratio. So there was 168 non-commercial vehicles, and there was 60 commercial vehicles, and that is equivalent to 14 to 5. All right, let's move on to the exercises. Let's look at exercise 1. All right, exercise 1 says the ratio of the number of people who own a smartphone to the number of people who own a flip phone is 4 to 3. If 500 more people own a smartphone than the flip phone, how many people own each type of phone? All right, so we're going to put, so it says the ratio of the number of people who own a smartphone to the number who own a flip phone is 4 to 3. That means 4 represents smartphone and 3 represents flip phone. So go ahead and draw your tape diagrams. All right, so there's one extra box for smartphones, and it says 500 more people own a smartphone. That means this little area here, that last box, it's only one, so that one has to represent 500. If this box represents 500, that means every box is going to equal 500. And if all those equal 500, all of these also equal 500. All right, so how many people owned a smartphone? Count it up. There's 500 plus 500 is 1,000. 1,000 plus 500 is 1,500 or 1,500. And 1,500 plus 500 is 2,000 people had a smartphone. All right, so let's add up the flip phones. 500 plus 500 is 1,000, plus 500 is 1,500 or 1,500 that owned the flip phone. So remember our key details in there, and always underline those key details. So it was 4 to 3, 500 more own a smartphone. Didn't say 500 owns a flip phone, it was 500 more, and that's why I knew that one box equaled 500. All right, so if you could pause the video at this time, and I want you guys to complete exercises 2 through 3 with a partner or with your group. Try to use those tape diagrams, and then we'll go over them. Okay, so I'm guessing you guys are done now. So let's look at number 2. It says Sammy and David were selling water bottles to raise money for new football uniforms. Sammy sold 5 water bottles for every 3 bottles David sold. There are some key details. Together they sold 160 water bottles. That's something else that should be underlined because that's another part of the key details. It says how many did each boy sell? All right, so you should have started with the initial ratio, which was 5 to 3. All right, so we know 5 is for Sammy, 3 is for David. And I would go ahead and create my tape diagram. All right, so we have the 5 to 3. I know that both of these together from the key details equals 160. So how many boxes are there in all that should equal 160? There's 5 for Sammy, 3 for David. That's 8 in all. So this would be over 8. So all you need to do is divide 160 by 8, and that would have given you 20. So that means each box is worth 20. Yes, I'm just reviewing this quick, so you guys should have already done this. This is just the exercises you all should have done together in your groups or with a partner. All right, so you should have seen that Sammy, 20 times 5 is 100. So Sammy sold 100 bottles, and David sold 20 times 3, which is 60 water bottles. Good job to all those who underlined their key details, created their tape diagrams and their ratios, and worked it out. All right, let's look at number 3 now. It says Miss Johnson and Miss Sipple were folding report cards to send home to parents. The ratio of the number of report cards Miss Johnson folded to the number of report cards Miss Sipple folded was 2 to 3. That should be underlined. That's your key details. At the end of the day, Miss Johnson and Miss Sipple folded a total of 300 report cards. How many did each person fold? So my initial ratio there was 2 to 3. All right, so that was the ratio of Miss Johnson to Miss Sipple. So Miss Johnson folded 2. I'm going to put 2 for her tape diagram. Miss Sipple, 3. And then it says at the end they folded a total of 300 report cards. So I know both of these should equal 300. All right, and there's 2 boxes for Miss Johnson, 3 for Miss Sipple. 2 plus 3 is 5, so that should have been divided by 5. All right, so you do 5 divided by 300. 5 goes into 36 times. 6 times 5 is 30. Bring down your 0. 5 goes into 0 0 times. And then you're left with none remaining. So that means each one of these boxes were worth 60. All right, then all you need to do is multiply 60 times 2 to see that Miss Johnson folded a total of 120 report cards, and Miss Sipple folded a total of 180 report cards. All right, good job to all of those who got the right answer for number 3. If you did not do it, correct it as we go. All right, let's look at number 4. It says at a country concert, the ratio of the number of boys and the number of girls is 2:7. All right, there's the first part of your key details. If there are 250 more girls than boys, how many boys are at the concert? So I know my initial ratio is 2:7. That's boys to girls. That means boys represents the 2. So I'm going to put boys and girls. So boys was 2. Girls was 7. All right, so there's 7 for girls, 2 for boys. It says that there were 250 more girls than boys. That means, all right, I leave these 2 out because that matches up to 2 here. So that means this much, all the extra, the 5 extra girls, represents 250. All right, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 extra boxes. So that means we need to divide by 5. All right, so 250 divided by 5 is 50. If all of these are equal to 50, that means these are 2, which means each one of the boys are equal to 50. And it was asking how many boys were at a concert. 50 times 2 is 100. So you should have had 100 boys were at the concert. All right, so underlining that key details helps with any confusion or getting the wrong answer there. All right, so there was a few problems on the problem set. I'm going to quickly review those. Number 1 says last summer at Camp Okefenokee, the ratio of the number of boy campers to the number of girl campers was 8:7. If there was a total of 109 campers, how many boys were there? How many girl campers? All right, so you should have added 8 plus 7, which is 15. And all you had to do is take that total amount and divide by 15. All right, 15 goes into 19 one time. 1 times 15 is 15. Subtract that, we have 4. Bring down your 5. All right, 15 goes into 45 3 times. 3 times 15 is 45, and you're left with 0 remaining. So then all you have to do is multiply 13 times 8 for the number of boys and 13 times 7 for the number of girls. Let me erase this real quick. All right, so 13 times 8 would have given you 104 boys. And then 13 times 7 would have given you 91 girls at Camp Okefenokee. And you could have done a tape diagram as well to show that. I've shown y'all quite a bit of tape diagrams, so we're just reviewing this. All right, so number 2 says the student to faculty ratio at a small college is 7:3, so there's some key details. 17:3. The total number of students and faculty is 740. So it says how many members are there at the college, and how many faculty members are there at the college, and how many are students. So the first thing you need to do, you should underline your key details. All right, we know that the ratio is 17:3. And we know that there was 740 in all. So 17:3 Whoops. And then 740 in all. Well, 17 plus 3 would give me 20. So that'd give me my whole ratio, the whole amount. And you would divide that by 20 to see that all you need to do was multiply 17, the number of students, by 20, and then multiply 3 times 20 to give you the number of, 17 times 20 and 3 times 20. Oh, I'm sorry. I was confusing myself. 17 times 20 and then 3 times, oh, I can't erase that. 740. I'm sorry guys, I don't know where my brain went here. We're doing 740 divided by 20 and I'm trying to multiply it by 20. It was 17. So 740 divided by 20 equals 37. So that means you just multiply 17 times 37. And then you multiply 3 times 37. Sorry about that, guys. All right, so let me erase this. All right, so multiply 17. If you multiply 17 by 37, you would have had that there were 629 students. And if you would have multiplied the 3 times 37, you would have seen there is 111 faculty members. And then 629 plus 111 would have given you the 740 total. All right, let's look at the next one. Good job to all those who got that. Number 3 says, the Speedy Fast Ski Resort has started to keep track of the number of skiers and snowboarders who bought season passes. The ratio to number of skiers who bought season passes to the number of snowboarders who bought season passes is 1 to 12. That's your first key detail. If 1,250 more snowboarders bought season passes than skiers, how many snowboarders and how many skiers bought season passes? All right, so make sure you underlined your key detail. It was 1 to 2, and that was the number of skiers who bought season passes to snowboarders. So 1 represents skiers, 2 represents snowboarders. So if 1,250 more snowboarders bought season passes, well, this would be easy to see in I'm going to put SK for skiers and SN for snowboarders. Skiers is 1, snowboarders is 2. That means this represents 1,250. So that means each one of these boxes equals 1,250. All right, so then it says how many snowboarders and how many skiers bought season passes. Well, 1 times 1,250 for skiers is just 1,250. 1,250 times 2, and that's for the skiers. For the snowboarders, 1,250 times 2 is 2,500. So there's 2,500 for snowboarders and just 1,250 for skiers. So that one was pretty easy. All right, let's erase this. The last one is going to go over. And then if you have any questions, you can ask the teacher and she will be reviewing as well. The last one says the ratio of the number of adults to the number of students at the prom has to be 1 to 10. Last year, there were 477 more students than adults at the prom. All right, it says if the school is expecting the same attendance this year, how many adults have to attend the prom? So your ratio is 1 to 10. Says last year there was 477 more students than adults. So if you had that tape diagram for adults and students, that means we'd have had to create 10, 1, 2, 3. There's 10. That means all 9 of these boxes, because you have these two equal, should have equaled 477. So then you would just divided that by 9, and you should have seen, so you've done 477 divided by 9 to see that each box should have equaled 53. And I'm not going to write 53 in each little box. So 1 times, so for this one, that just means this equals 53. 1 times 53 is just 53. So that means 53 adults had to be at prom to keep that 1:10 ratio. Since this equaled 477, the 9 extra boxes, the one that means all of them equals 53. Adults, 1 times 53 is 53. So you should have had 53 for number 4. All right. Good job, guys. You keep practicing. I know you guys are going to do well and you're going to enjoy your new teacher. Bye, you guys.